Yeah, I know the set of lectures is long, but you got to admit there's a lot of information packed in here. And actually, to talk about network theory, there are books and classes. I'm trying to touch on some of the key things and key ideas which are critical about this. But what it comes down to is critical mass. It's like, how can I get this thing to run on its own? Well, first of all, I know that in terms of these clusters, 150 is the limit from Dunbar's rule, and the average is about 130. What they found is that if you can create, and this 150 is truly a village and connected together, if you can get 10 to 15% of those people active, then you can have a self-sustaining system. And the thing they found is like in Facebook activity, if you have too many friends, your activity level starts going down. On the other hand, if you have certain clusters of friends, what you're going to find is your activity level might be much higher the smaller it is. And so what you see is this is where you get penetration in a social network. Essentially around 10 to 15% if you have activity, then people start talking to other people and everything else, and that's how you get connected. The thing is, you can think of each of these target segments as a bucket. And so, in a sense, that's like a market. And so if I can get critical mass, where this is truly a market, everybody's active, everybody's communicating together, and if I can get 10 to 15%, then I can get a certain amount of money from that bucket. And then now I need to go on to the next bucket and the next bucket. The thing is, again, this bucket is like about segmentation. How precise is it? The thing is, when you talk about a bucket, you also have to think about, is critical mass achievable? For example, if you say my bucket is the United States of America, that means I got to get 45 million people active. Good luck with that one. But it comes down from your target market to your addressable market. When they talk about how a market grows, you see the classic knee in the curve going up. The reality is that your revenue over time doesn't look like that. What it does look like is this, that you have lots of gyrations in it. And what those gyrations are is early on, that first bucket is your cult. And then you get a bigger bucket, a new set of customers. And then you get more customers in different market segments, more customers in other market segments, and then you keep growing. And that's what you're doing. You're basically filling up buckets and getting more buckets, where each of those buckets represents a segment in your market that you can attack. And so the thing is, it's just like a real network. We were talking about bandwidth, speed, and efficiency. It takes a certain amount of time to reach the community. Frequency is how active is it. Latency is very important. Like if I have a social campaign, how long do I have to wait before I see something happen? And that happens lots of times where you do something and say, oh my God, we're dead, nothing's happening. And then the next thing you find out is 5 days later, all of a sudden you take off. And so this is where the patterns become important. Recognizing, do I have whys? Do I have stars? Do I have influencers? How well does this work? And the other thing is, you also have to look at your costs. Because again, it's all about how do I make money? And so as I go on, I should be lowering costs. So in terms of maintaining a network, how do I keep this thing going? What it comes down to is you have to have good content. You have to provide something of value to the network so that they're interested in you. Once again, value proposition. How frequently are you on there? If you're not active and you do not have a presence, then people are going to forget about you. So the whole thing is, how can I get to a critical mass level? What repeat users value? Because basically repeat activity is about having, finally getting things primed so they can run. They value information. They value that emotionally when they go there, that they find it fulfilling, supportive. They care about how much time it requires. If I have to go on there and I have to wait 3 days to get a response, it's like, I'm not interested. And also financially, how much is it going to cost me? The other aspect of emotion I'll also touch on is security. The thing about the net is a very negative place, and it can be very brutal. So why do you go to your Facebook page? Because you know the people there, you're comfortable there, you feel secure there. Why do you buy from certain websites? Because you have a history, you know who they are. And so what it comes down to is you're trying to build perceived value. So it's how you position yourself, what associations do you have, what sense of urgency do you have. For example, I work with Dropbox at work, but the thing is, in general, people are going to work Monday to Friday, and that's it. Whereas Snapchat is something that can happen every day. And in terms of exchange, do the nodes work well? Now, in terms of building a perceived value relationship, these are the variables. And let's see, the only one I'll pick out, which might be kind of counterintuitive, it's like if I have more influence, there's people interact more frequently, it's a unique place, it's relevant to who I am, and it has very high value. Naturally, the perceived value of that place goes up. On the other hand, ND is the number of users and the distance. As those get bigger, then my perceived value goes down. Now you say number of users go up too much. Well, what they're referring to is if you grow much beyond 150. The more you grow beyond 150, you're just thinking, oh, this thing's too massive. This isn't personalized. This is no good for me. That's what it means. Essentially, in order to get critical mass, again, it's about information, emotion, time, and economics. And so what it comes down to is these factors, and I'll just let you read through the table. In terms of tactics, what are the things you can affect? Make good communication where you're focused. And that's the thing. MySpace, after they got killed by Facebook, what did they do? They realized, look, we can't be a ubiquitous communication platform for everyone. We've already gotten killed doing that. So they found a niche. They focused on music. Promotion affects the variables U, R, and V. Optimize your segment size, meaning you have to pick the variable about how frequently do they interact, or what's the time lag, the distance involved. And also, can you find sub-networks, smaller networks that can affect the larger network or relationships? Some of the drivers that affect things are, do you have holes? What's the critical path, meaning how long does it take? The longest time is actually the critical path. And can I create equivalency? And that's that instead of going through all these steps, can I find alternative ways to get around this? And so in terms of individuals like gatekeepers, how do I induce my customers to be more active? And so what do? I offer incentives. I look for influencers, coercion. I target individuals, the gatekeepers, the liaisons, and the bridges. My gatekeepers could be the entry point. My liaisons are basically people who can talk to other groups. And in terms of bridges, if I can use those to lock out competition. In terms of my social network design, it's pretty much like computer design. You want to minimize the number of steps, which is called hop count. You want to control the length, which is basically the time and latency. And you want it to be robust, which means that you can actually build in duplication. And that's if I have several markets, and if I lose one network, I can still have the others. And so, in terms of social network output, these are the variables that I'm concerned with. The topology, the dynamic state, meaning, do I have people constantly coming in and out of this thing where it becomes random, or is there a consistency in order? In terms of psychology, again, I look at how efficient is this, or how many middlemen do I have to go through this? How many holes? Also security, how attracted am I to it? And also ranking counts. I mean, people look at it. I look at it. When I buy a product or something, I think, okay, how are people rating this? When a search page comes up, as it turns out, the first entry on a search page takes up like 80% of the business. People just really don't go down. And once you get past the first page, then the odds of people buying from the second page drops. I don't have the statistics with me, but I think it's like 5%. It really starts to drop down. Dr. Cho is a weirdo. I'll actually buy things off of the third page because I'm very thorough. So, what does social networks apply to? You can build marketing strategies off this because it's all about social interaction. We can also look at how we can become more effective by looking at these networks. And the thing is, today, you have to know it. Everybody knows it. Everybody's working with it. And everybody has access to data. So what it kind of comes down to, but your big advantage is that everybody thinks about tools when it's really about interpretation, analysis, and understanding the basic concepts underlying it. And one of the biggest challenges of all is it's easy to get data, but you get a lot of noise. So how do I get the noise out of it? And why analysis is so important is what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out how can I manipulate the system. And what is manipulating that system? It's strategy. Let's see. And so the other things you think about is how you emotionally bind to influencers. So in terms of software, these are the types of things people do to build stronger networks. You tag everything, especially video, especially pictures. And the reason why is because search engines, they don't know how to interpret it because all the picture is a bunch of pixels. What does it mean? And that's why it's important to tag a lot of things. You look at comments, you look at content and performance. And so subsequently, what software does out there right now for analyzing networks is it can tell you who your customers are, what kinds of things are they responding to, how are they responding, and you can optimize that performance. So what do I want out of a network? Well, basically active nodes, growth, and nodes with interest, meaning those nodes are going to be receptive to what I do. And so subsequently, the techniques that are so important, likes are hugely important, and shares. And the reason why is if I have one network, likes and shares, all of a sudden if people start liking, sharing things, guess what? They create a new segment. Now they're connected, and they become connected, and they become connected, and they become connected, and next thing you know, you can create a very large and active network. That's why referrals and ratings and things like that and linking, these are not random occurrences. These are willful occurrences. And that's the triggers that you can pull when you're making your strategy. And so some of the things I use it for, they've actually used Twitter to track disease because people start tweeting about who's getting sick and they just look at the location and all. You could look at societal design to see how well people communicate together. These are some of the things that they've been using network theory for. And so the big thing, though, is what's the limitations and challenges of this? And that's that you look at all this data, and it's kind of like, am I just looking at trying to find cloud animals, or is there something in there? And so what it comes down to is how do I figure out the noise? A lot of these questions we've already covered in other lectures. The thing is, the causality is more art than science. And what it comes down to is the art part is coming up with an explanation. And the science part is proving whether or not that made any sense. Again, over and over again, we see the same things about hypothesis and testing. So that's our lecture on networks.